Okay, I'd like to call this regular meeting to order at 6 o'clock, Port of Newport. Okay. First up, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay. No changes. Next up is public comment. If anybody wishes to make public comment, raise your hand, be called on, and state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Okay? Anybody wish to make public comment? Okay? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Mark Newell. I'm a commercial fisherman, fishing out of Newport here since 1975. Started with crab, now I'm fishing cod, crab, halibut, whatever. Also a buyer processor. Started that business in the I think early 90s when Don Mann was here. I kind of started when there wasn't even any offloading at the port terminal or port dock 5 and 7. They changed that policies. I read Heather's letter here, which I'm sure most of you read, and I agree with it. Well written, and bottom line is we like the ability as a buyer or a fisherman to be able to offload our products up at the terminals, especially when the hoist there at Port Dock 5 and 7 are full. Being that Pacific has now bought up most of the bayfront and there's not much competition, and they own pretty much all the hoists except for Bornstein's. And we've had the slime eel fishery expand. It takes a long time to offload those boats. A lot of the bigger boats that go to Pacific or Bornstein's or Hallmark are now selling to the live buyers because there's more money that they're offering. That facility is tied up, and it's a real hardship for us and the people we're selling to have to wait all day for us to get a boat underneath one of those places. A lot of times we have it scheduled, and it's a first come, first served basis there, and you just don't know how long it's going to take for that vessel to be offloaded. So you have people that are just waiting around, and time is money. So I would appreciate the ability for us to go up to the terminals and use that facility up there. I think it's going to be more money that the port will be able to take in, and it'll help the local fleet immensely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Carrie Granberg, and I'm with Living Pacific Seafood, another buyer. I don't unload my own as much. My own catches, I do a lot of the live buying at the port right now, probably at least like 50%, I would say, that's going on this season. And we're using the hoist for long periods of time. I mean, we're starting before dawn, and sometimes we're there till after dark. And there are boats that it does kind of congest it up when you've got all these buyers there. And we realize that it congests it up for boat work that might happen with boats or other small vessels that want to sell their own catch. And it's just a reality. And we brought it up in a meeting in the user group meeting. And that's kind of what Heather Mann wrote about here, about us having the opportunity to use the international terminal for unloading, and if that was possible, or if there was a rule against it, and that was to be reviewed, and then we hadn't heard back. And now, at the last user group meeting, Mark had brought it up, and we wanted it reviewed again, and they said that they hadn't been able to find anything yet. With that, the terminal is sitting there. We have a salary worker there all day, and we're willing to give money to that person too. We're willing to put more money into the port. If Mark has to wait to use the hoist and I'm on the hoist, you're losing money because you can have Mark's money. If he has to leave and go bring it at the dock, or can't unload that day, you missed out on an opportunity for income. Same thing with the eels, like you said. If you take one boat, maybe like 5 hours to unload. I can move lots of boats sometimes during that time, but if you take eels, it's like a long time. And they've been using the crane, which is then not getting paid at a crane rate. And if you don't get a crane rate, and you've got a guy sitting in there having to run the crane, and it's really slow. The one crane is kind of breaking down, and it's really slow. So again, it's just more congestion going on when we could be possibly using the property of the port. better and more efficiently, and also for better income for the port. So that's just my public comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Next item is consent calendar. There's A, B, and C. So I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Nobody? Okay. Correspondence and presentations. Charlie Plybon. Yes. Please.
For the record, my name is Charlie Platt. I'm the Oregon Policy Manager for Surfrider Foundation. I do live here in the Lincoln County area, in South Beach, so I am a constituent of the port. I forwarded some information on to the council about offshore oil drilling. And as many of you guys may know, the administration has proposed through the Department of Interior that 90% of the United States continental shelf be opened up to offshore oil drilling, which includes a lease proposal off of Oregon and Washington for one of the units. And this is unprecedented from any other administration. We've seen some interest in offshore oil expansions before, but even under the most conservative and fossil fuel interest administrations, we haven't seen such a robust proposal. So a lot of us in Oregon are very alarmed and concerned about this. We have a $500 million fishing industry that depends on a clean and healthy ocean. Behind that, we have another $2.4 billion annually that's generated from our ocean resources here. All this stands to be threatened by offshore oil drilling. We don't have a whole lot of oil off our shore, but what we do know from past economy research, which was a long time ago, that it's close. It's not 30, it's not 40, it's not 60 miles out there. If there is oil, it's likely pretty close to that barrier between the territorial sea and the offshore continental shelf, so 4 to 6 mile range. Which means if they were drilling, the chances of an accident or anything sort of impacting our nearshore ports and our stable communities as they are that depend on the ocean could be pretty catastrophic. The Port of Toledo last week passed a resolution in opposition of offshore oil drilling. The City Council in Newport is considering the same, and I'm here tonight to offer some language and your consideration on the Port of Newport's resolution in opposition of offshore oil drilling.
Okay. You said you're offering language. Is that the last?
So
there's some examples in the packet, and then there's the last one. Is that the?
Yeah. So in your packet, I think that what was forwarded on to you was a few things. One, the most recent that I have that has the ink dry on it is from the Port of Ilwaca in Washington. And so I grabbed that one and sent that on to give you an idea. I have a general framework that's got kind of all the whereases and clauses and stuff in there to plug in. And I should have the Port of Toledo's version that they took from that framework and put together by the end of the day, I would hope. I asked for it earlier this morning and I haven't gotten it back yet from them. But I'm happy to entertain other questions or provide more language. I also gave you a letter from our congressional delegates that sort of outlines sort of what's at stake in Oregon's economy with our ocean resources, and that's what you got. So.
Okay.
So what I could do is I could take what's been provided here and put together something and have it ready for the next meeting. Is that too late for you, Charlie? Or
sooner the better.
Yeah.
I think that if your next opportunity to vote on something is going to be at your next meeting, then that's probably the time to do it. The comment period ends March 9th. Our congressional delegates today issued a press release, and they're asking for an extension. I doubt that's going to happen. So the deadline is coming up quick, but that doesn't mean that any demonstration for opposition doesn't carry weight into the future. There will be a draft plan that comes back out again after this initial public comment period. So technically, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management should respond to this public comment period, this 1.5 months that they gave folks. come back out with another draft, and look at another public comment period. We are urging our coastal towns, cities, and communities and ports to take a stand as soon as possible on this issue.
Anybody have any thoughts?
Well, can we make some commitment to this and wait for Port of Toledo and parody what they do, or do we have to wait for a vote?
Page 63 is their language they provided.
It's
Page 63 in our packet.
Oh, okay, so that's the blank one.
Yeah, that's a totally blank template.
yeah.
It doesn't really have like Oregon language in there writing for it.
Right.
At the risk of writing it for you, I'd be happy to provide more language. I simply wanted to bring this to the commission first, but I'd be happy if you wanted me to put on this and help.
Why doesn't we work with Aaron on this and can run it through Patricia at that point?
That's what I was thinking. As long as we can get it, we can have it done before the March 9th deadline, no problem.
So we can approve a resolution tonight and then pending final authorization by Patricia.
Right.
My only comment is I like the language more so, say, in the Lincoln County Commissioner's letter than the blank letter.
Yeah.
I like the straightforward.
This is your
personally,
resolution.
I like
yeah.
that one better. But yes, if you want to work with Patricia and see where we go with that. So, sound good?
Sure. I'll make a ring at it. I'm fine with it. I think we could, I'll make a motion that we approve this draft resolution pending update by Patricia with maybe possible changes to language to oppose offshore oil drilling off the coast of Oregon.
Do you have a second?
I second
Do you want to speak to your motion? Okay.
As stated.
Okay. Personally, I'm going to oppose the motion just because I don't particularly like the language in this one as much as the Lincoln County Commissioners. I can support something more along that lines, but I don't want to. We probably can't get into drafting a draft tonight.
But we can certainly. I mean, it's pretty.
I was authorizing the draft pending further.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I share a little bit of Jeff's comments. I mean, I think we're all somewhat similar minds here, but I'd like to see some of the wording. I'd like it to stay focused on port-related types of concerns, not have it expanding too much further outside the realm of what we're here to be a part of.
I agree with that.
So we can.
I think the motion leaves that wide open for Patricia and then she can see her comment.
So, good.
I was just saying, just like us, the commission to see it before it gets sent out, so that we have an opportunity to comment on it.
I can definitely get that done.
Okay. So we have a direction.
Yep.
And
Do we need?
Do we need to amend the motion or are we good?
I think the motion's fine. I think that gives me enough direction that we can get it changed. I know what you're talking about. We want to talk about our local resources here that they mentioned, like how successful the fishing fleet is. The Oregon State University's Hatfield Marine Science Center. We have
Tourism.
research capabilities that are coming to town. All of these things we want to really highlight those things, make it personal to us. It becomes more effective that way, I think. So we can definitely get that done.
Okay.
And do you have a number for the resolution?
It's a 2018.
I don't know which number are we on.
Yeah, I don't know either.
We could add that later.
I can add the correct
Okay.
number.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody's opposed. Okay.
Just a point of order. We may be issuing a press release that certain entities are taking action. And I just want to clarify, would it be appropriate to say that the Port of Newport unanimously approved the direction of a resolution in opposition to offshore oil drilling, and leave it at that.
That's what we just did.
Yep. I would say so.
I want to recognize,
The Port Commission did that.
yes, I want to recognize that the language isn't set, but the direction and the intent is there.
Yes.
Council.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
I'm sorry I have to leave. I have to go to another public meeting.
Next item, committee reports, Commercial Fishing Users Group Committee. Heather Management.
Thanks, Jeff. I'll just hit the highlights. I think everybody, the commissioners all have a copy of the report. Just real quickly, the reason we're providing the report in this format is at your last commission meeting, I talked to you all about better aligning the users committee group with the agenda of the commission so we could advise you on the things you're talking about. This meeting came about actually as a result of Stuart requesting the work session that occurred today and some of the topics that you were interested in covering. So in talking with Aaron, we said let's get a users committee together, we'll talk about the terminal, we'll provide some input. It didn't end up working out to provide it for the work session because that was totally focused on finances, although we did review the finances in that PowerPoint from Todd Kimball at our meeting. But one of the other things that was interesting that came up at the last Port Commission meeting, in fact, Stuart, this was from you, where you said, well, I don't want the committee to be precluded from discussing other things. The committee was set up as a way to, as issues come up, bring those forward to the commission. So this is a combination of all those things. The first thing on here is actually something that was brought about by members of the industry. You've heard from Mark, who was one of them, at the committee meeting, who was expressing concern about congestion at the hoist. And staff that was there, Ken Gibson, was in agreement about the difficulty with the congestion. And then the discussion continued on about, well, the terminal's empty, the hoist is empty, could they use that facility? And so the committee made the recommendation that the port develop a short-term temporary plan that allows seafood products to be unloaded there at the international terminal. The other three recommendations that came out of the committee were more longer-term and focused on terminal operations. Everybody was in agreement that there should be a business plan put in place or developed both for the port and the individual units, the terminal being one of them. There was a little bit of discussion about the potential of that today during public comment. And then the other two recommendations coming out of the committee had to do with agreements. And again, this was something that Stuart had brought up, talking about we need to get an operational type plan. People need to know what's going on up there, and in order to start doing that, we have to actually understand what any of the policies are. And we should review anything that we have, see what is applicable, what's not. And so we had two that were provided to us. I don't know if they're the only two that are actually in writing. I get that sense from Aaron, but I know there's some difficulty in locating some maybe old files. But the two that we had were a tie-up policy that was drafted in 1998 and then a lines agreement. And the tie-up policy has to do with how long commercial vessels could be tied up to the dock. The committee agreed that this tie-up policy was no longer applicable, and that the commission should acknowledge that it's no longer enforceable. I don't know if it was ever enforced. But we think that you're going to need to have a tie-up plan eventually, depending on what's going on there. And so the recommendation was that the commission recognized that it's null and void right now, but a new one will eventually have to be created in order to accommodate whatever activity, shipping, fishing, recap, unloading, whatever's happening up there. And then the lines agreement has to do with longshoremen or labor and tying up of vessels, tying up and untying of vessels. That's from the 90s as well. And I think David Jinks pointed out that 2/3 of the folks that signed that are not even alive anymore. I don't know that it's ever been reviewed and updated. I don't know that it needs to be. but the committee thought that it should be reviewed and updated. And so those are the 4 primary recommendations that came out of the committee. We had a huge attendance, and we met for 3 hours. And then following those recommendations on the pages after, there are more details about each of the recommendations. And then we we started off the meeting with a presentation from Rondi's, and really what we wanted to say about that work that Evan's doing is that we support it. We really appreciate the cooperation that they have with the port and their interest in collaborating and working together. He talked about the potential for eventually creating more dock space. That's several years out, but everybody was in agreement that while a floating dock could provide some relief, that a fixed pier really would provide the most benefit. He talked about the development of those things being attached to attracting potentially a seafood processor or a conglomerate of smaller processors and perhaps some cold storage. He said that's sort of a longer term thing, and he's still trying to gauge interest in partners for that type of activity. And then we ended our discussion with some conversations about future activity at the terminal. And so one of the things we heard from one of the committee members, who's an albacore fisherman, was that the albacore fleet, the West Coast albacore fleet, is looking for a place to tie up the summer and to unload their catch. And that they are projecting about 2 million pounds of albacore to be unloaded, looking for some moorage space, not for long periods of time, but short periods of time. And I think, I didn't write it down. I think they tried Westport. They can't go there. Or maybe it was Oahu. It was someplace up north. But they said, the terminal would be an excellent location. And what would we have to do to consider allowing something like that to happen? So that was included here, marketing the terminal to other fishery users, partnering with the Port of Toledo and the shipyards to market the terminal. Right now, a lot of people will stage at the terminal before they go to Toledo to get boat work done. A lot of work is actually done down at the terminal. Marine research activity is a huge one. And in fact, today I was reading the strategic plan and thought there was a lot of emphasis by the board on marine research activity growth. We talked about niche and short sea shipping opportunities. We still all believe that those exist and think they need to be explored. And then small cruise ship port calls was another one that we talked about. But we thought that all that is in the, as a business plan is developed first, it takes into consideration all the current users of the terminal and what their projected growth and income is. And then let's get that terminal busy all year round. So that's what this report is. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Heather.
I just had a question, and I think Aaron and I touched on this, but as far as the hoist dock, how crazy that's been. I know you've been sent out some emails commenting about how busy it is down there. Did everything actually get offloaded appropriately? I mean, the boats didn't have to leave Newport in order to offload somewhere else during this latest push that anybody knows of?
I think we did get them offloaded. I think there was some delays here and there. Mark probably had what, a couple of hours or so, maybe 2.5, something like that. That was on this last Friday. That's not, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that that's a real normal thing. Usually that's a little bit longer than what we would intend for people to have to wait. But see, I don't get a lot of, people don't always come to me and say, hey, I'm looking to get offloaded. And so that was one of the things I need to get out there to be really clear, is I am interested in helping as many people as we possibly can. I want to be able, so if you're not getting offloaded on time, please let me know and let me try and get something done about that so we can get you helped out. But as far as I know, I don't think anybody else is. But some guys might go elsewhere and just not say anything. I don't know. I don't know of anybody that has. So,
is the equipment all functioning as well as it can down there?
Not as well as it can. We definitely have some improvements. We're working on an improvement to one of our hoists right now that allows a telescope so that it can operate better. And we got some old cranes that those things, they were surplus off of some Army rolling stock. in the late 80s, I think, or mid 80s, somewhere in there, and we definitely used some, new equipment. But it's which one is it? It's number
3 is the crane that's really slow in the middle, the largest one, like the one that you really put a ship to do boat work. Like when they come in and they need to like pull their rigging off and stuff for shrimp, they go to that one most of the time, and that's the one that's functioning at the lowest capacity.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an issue. But then also I would say you should add the electrical issues. There's definitely a lack of power for what's going on there right now.
Yeah.
And you pop breakers all the time. There's all kinds of power issues, just like the docks. The unloading hoists have some pretty substantial power issues going on, and some things that are just being kind of limped along.
And even at hoist 3, it's got we've been debating about. They've been debating over what's causing it since I first got here. That was, if you remember, last summer we put a new motor in it and did a bunch of other things to it. But I mean, it's time to start considering new equipment down there, I think.
So some of the delays may be as a result, it sounded like.
Well, yeah. So if somebody pulls up to one of the swing hoists, they can get offloaded faster because the cranes move slower. And additionally, what Kerry was getting at is if we have somebody, if our swing hoists are clogged up, and we put a guy into one of the cranes to offload somebody, we don't charge them the additional amount for the crane because everything else is occupied. Aside from that, I mean, you have issues underneath the pier as well. I mean, it was just that most of that is asphalt over the top of wood. There's portions of it that are, and as I mentioned, it's not that uncommon if you've gone down there anytime just like this last month to see, 2 or 3 18-wheelers and probably about 3 to maybe 5 box trucks down there waiting, either with bait or getting loaded with catch or, any number of things. So, it's definitely, as I've said though before, it's one of the busiest places we have in our whole port, depending on the time. I mean, it's definitely a good thing for everybody what goes on down there, I think.
But it sounded like though that, it's not like we don't have a bottomless pit of money. We can't buy a new crane tomorrow. But it seems like there might even be some opportunities for some additional servicing on this stuff that might help it be more efficient with what we have.
Oh, yes.
Potentially, if we make that investment.
Yes, we could probably get a lot of return for very little investment in that location. In various different. One of the things that the independent buyers have brought up to us is, and you guys are aware of this, is our billing process is really slow. That's what's created the questions about financial statements month to month. So it may take us. It may take us quite some time to get bills back to the independent buyers because we bill by the hour of forklift operation, or by crane operations, or by hours of tie-up and things like that. If you restructured, I don't know what the impacts of this are, and I haven't really talked with a lot of the buyers about it, but I've had a few of them suggest to us that maybe we should go to a price per pound, whatever that is. Would have to get worked out, but the possibility of that making us faster at billing it exists there because we work off fish tickets basically.
But I mean, that's almost another discussion in some ways. I'm just trying to get at the sort of condition of the equipment down there, and
right.
If there's something that, short of me asking, well, maybe we need to do a survey of this stuff, like have a technician come down and give us an estimate of what it's going to take to bring this stuff, what we have, what we can do, what those costs would be, and is that something that you need?
I don't think that's going to help us. Yaquina Boat helps us evaluate the equipment from time to time anyway. What we have is just old equipment.
I get it, but I'm trying to see if there's anything we can do or any money that potentially we should consider investing in. Again, fixing up with what we have in the short term to alleviate some of this going forward.
We could possibly look at.
Blowing breakers doesn't sound like a good.
No, it's not. It's not good. That one particular crane, our slow crane, it's the one that we need to get figured out. What is it? But what we may find out is the thing just needs to be replaced. So. We can probably put it right there and see how we can get that crane to go a little bit faster and work more efficiently. we're still going to need to make a lot of upgrades there, though. So.
I'm the liaison for this committee, and just to overview a little bit about what Heather said, is that we started out that we're parroting the agenda, and the agenda ended up being finances about the commission, our meeting. But we started the user group meeting with a presentation from Evan Hall, which was a wonderful presentation, gave us all a lot of hope for lots of plans in the future, and he was well received. We want, dock space, cold storage. These are all things down the road. 3 years would be the earliest possible time any kind of floating dock to go in. But the recommendation is very clear from this group on page 1. This is an immediate need, and this has been talked about in Crandon work last summer. And this is a different conversation, like Stuart says, about it's happening now. It was brought up at a user group meeting or 2 meetings ago about the fact that one of the buyers came back that was in another location. He's one of the larger buyers. Everybody knew it was going to be a big problem, and it's a big problem right now that had been talked about earlier. Nothing was done, so we're in kind of an immediate need, is the way that I see it as a recommendation from the fishermen using this. And it's so frustrating for everybody to see the hoist dock at the terminals just swinging in the breeze, totally empty, very little going on. And so I think that what this committee wants to know is, why can't they use that hoist out there right now? And if it is a policy situation, is there anything that the commission can do to do some immediate short-term plan for overflow when all the breakers break, the weather breaks, and all the buyers are in, and this is going to continue. It's a big crab season, the eels are constant. That I think that's what the people attending the user group committee want to know. Is there something we can do immediately to okay the use of the hoist at the terminals, because we have personnel there, we have a hoist, it's not being used. We could get more commerce if we can turn it over quickly. And so that's what I think we need to speak to. And it was constantly asked, as nice as everybody could, because, people want to get their fish offloaded. Where are these agreements that say yay or nay? And is there something the commission can do to move forward in a short-term solution for an empty hoist at the dock that could be making us money?
Just out of curiosity, is there a reason why not? I'm not saying let's do it, but is there a reason why not?
So in trying to figure out what exists or what has existed in the past, we searched records, and we've provided everybody with what we could find written. I talked to Yale Fogarty to see what kind of arrangements existed out there before. My understanding is that it's generally been the general manager's discretion who was going to go where, and that it was generally accepted that the commercial marina was a traditional place for landing catch, and that the terminal was a traditional place for cargo. And that's the way I understand it. But there's nothing like
that's the way you understand it from what? From written policy, or from what do you understand that from?
From the lack of a written policy that I can find that really clearly defines that, and then by talking with Yale and the way that they had worked with previous general managers, and then talking to fishing side as well on what do you guys usually do. That's the best I could come up with. That's what's traditionally been done.
So there's not a policy that's a barrier.
I don't have a written policy that I can find that says you can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, question from the...
Jeff,
Yes.
can I interject? Yale 40.
I just wanted to say that other people had their hands up before Yale, and maybe we should clear up. I know Mark was used to the user group.
I'll speak up.
In the user group meeting, it's wide open that we allow comments from the...
Right. This is different, but
It's allowed to.
Okay, take answer.
it's addressing us. The ILWU does not want to create a hardship to any local fishermen, and I want to make that extremely clear. And I would be willing to sit down and work with Aaron if that's how the commission directs him, and come up with something at least on a temporary basis for now until a firm written policy could be created to alleviate the problem. I'm hearing these guys; they're my neighbors. I mean, they're not my next door neighbor, but they've lived here a long time, just like I have. And that's not, our interest is not to create a hardship or anything else as far as what our jurisdiction is, or if there's question to our jurisdiction. I think there is some written stuff that's around, but I think it goes way back to probably early 90s or before. We have an issue with finding stuff at our union hall because we had a fire in the early 90s and a lot of stuff was destroyed, and there was no electronic thing. So, like I said, if, you know, Aaron and I have chatted a couple times, you know, about it. I talked to Kevin Greenwood a couple times about it, and like I said, if the commission directs Aaron, I believe that in very short order we could have an agreement that would help alleviate pressure on the local fleet for now until a firm policy could be put in place. And I think that goes a long way as far as addressing the issue of Heather and the committee, and also gets things moving, and also helps these guys make money and stay in business, because that's what we want. We want economy, we want growth, we want to make money, and so, you know, I think we can offer up some suggestions.
Okay. Yes.
I appreciate Gail's comment there very much. And you know, we're all neighbors, we're all in this community, we want to work together. Going back to the hoist here at the public hoist, you know, sometimes you guys, you're running out of crew there. Guys are working overtime. You're down to 2 guys. You know, guys get sick. They have families they have to go to. Those hoists, they need to be operated by a man. That takes somebody off a forklift. Most of the time, you need 2 forklifts running at least to you know, you got two or 3 buyers going. So a lot of times, you don't have a hoist to operate because you don't have a man to man that hoist. So you're back down to 2 man hoists. So even though you got 5 hoists, 3 hoists and 2 man hoists there, you know, basically the hoists are not workable. Or there might be a boat that are big enough that they're not be able to use them. So that's another reason to be able to use that terminals up there. Oh, one more thing. And we're dealing with crab. If fresh water comes down that bay, it'll kill the crab. So it's very important to get those crab off in a very timely manner, or they're not worth anything to anybody. So it's not just a matter of waiting your turn, it's a matter of the fresh water killing them. And price now is $3.50 a pound. Guy comes in and has 3,000 pounds of crab. We've seen it and had guys lose their whole load before. Once they start dying, they die quick.
Okay. We probably don't want to spend too much more time if we don't have to.
I just suggest have Gail talk with Aaron, and then maybe have Gail, more than either of you, go to the next missions unit and maybe work some stuff out there.
Yeah, he's welcome to go, but why does it need to be worked out with?
Well, no, he's talking about if we're going to be doing some long-term policy stuff, I think we should be involved with that.
Long-term policy stuff, but if the commission wishes to discuss policy, you're saying, what are you suggesting?
Aaron, talk with him temporarily, temporary solution. Then if we're going to be doing some long-term policy, they should be invited.
Why does I don't understand why you want Aaron to work with Gail on
what he was just talking about.
Well,
for temporary policy.
There's 2 different things going on here. I think Walter's talking long-term, short-term. I mean, from my perspective, I think what we're talking about here is a short-term solution to an immediate problem, and it also sounds like a scheduling problem, which is something that we should be leaning on our manager here, our pro tem manager, to sort out. And I think if the commission is acceptable to this, I mean, I would think that we could, in the short term, in lieu of, and I'm not, it's not like I don't want to change anything, but I'm also don't want to make a knee-jerk policy here when we say, well, we haven't found any of this stuff, so we should just get rid of it all. And I'd like to at least have a discussion about this, but in the short term, from my perspective, I don't see a reason why, if there's a failure of a piece of equipment, certainly at the hoist dock, or if for some reason, and forgive me, I don't know the vernacular, but if there's a major push with everybody's there and the delays are going to be of a certain amount of time, then it should be at the discretion, or I would suggest that we could put this at the discretion of the pro-term general manager to utilize that space, pending any agreements with existing known agreements with either labor or with port policy, and make those short-term exemptions until we can formalize some of these agreements. And is that something that you consider?
I think that sounds great, Stuart, I really do, because it's an immediate need, and I think Mark's point about freshwater, this is an iconic seafood product. It's got to go to market with the top quality, and that's what our fleet offers consumers, is top quality. So it is a very, very important, pressing, immediate need. And I have nothing bad to say about the longshoremen's role in loading and unloading ships in a safe manner and saving the port a fortune and liabilities and long-term and all of that. But I really don't see where their input is needed on this emergency short-term policy for the port. It's really doesn't affect any kind of loading or offloading of ships. It's just our customers needing help. And I think that we can, direct, like you said, we could direct the general manager to deal with that.
And I would only say that in that there is potentially something here that we need to be a little careful about. But I think in the short term, just like you said, if Aaron, if you can work with the Fishermen's User Group president as well as labor on a short-term document, or I want to call it an MOU, but something that you can at least circulate to the commission here that focuses on scheduling pressers, equipment failure, and we leave it at your discretion to open that up for these kinds of surge times. I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
Why is labor involved? That's what I'm not understanding.
Well, we have a committee believes that Line's agreement from 1996 should be reviewed and possibly updated. If
That's for tying up and untying vessels. It has nothing to do with unloading and loading.
I know, but what I'm trying to streamline this whole thing as well. And I think there's clearly a labor component to the offloading and loading of things at the international terminal.
Not fishing vessels.
Not fishing vessels.
So, and
Just a matter of clarification, the YLWU has unloaded fishing vessels at the international terminal.
And I'm not necessarily asking for either Yale or Heather's approval of any of this. It's just an opportunity to provide that kind of insight into a short underscore 1 to 2 paragraph clarification on an emergency policy, allowing the general manager to have the discretion to open the international terminal and relieve some of the pressure you guys are describing. That's all it is. I don't think I'm necessarily, it's just receiving input from some stakeholders. That's all. But I don't see why this can't be done in a day. I mean, this is, in my opinion, this is a short-term, quick response to an urgent need here, engaging some of the stakeholders that we just want to make sure that as we go forward, rewriting some of these policies, we're not going to sort of
rewriting
fall.
shipping policy.
Not now, Karen, but
Yeah,
I'm
I
cautiously
get it.
about this. So.
Whatever works to make it happen, these fishermen need help.
Seems like we're pretty much there. This wouldn't take. I mean, Aaron, what are your thoughts?
I think that people are much closer to being in complete agreement on this than what a lot of folks realize. I said the same thing at the Commercial Fishing User Group. We're talking about. I mean, and the question that I have, I guess, moving ahead here, and we'll have to get this worked out, is, once Dungeness season goes away, what next? How are we going to treat anything else that comes up? And the reason why I think it's important to address that stuff is because there's been a lot of concern over the last year or two about trust about what the port management was doing. And I want to make sure that as much as I possibly can, that these discussions are right out there and people understand that this is what we're working on, and this is what we're trying to do as a community. So, Sarah's got it.
Oh, please.
I would like clarification from Mark as to how long you think a temporary agreement for the crab season, because we have a lot of other work to do on agreements, but to get this done.
Well, the crab season is still going pretty strong, and the product comes in and pulls us. We get weather, everybody's weathered in, and we go fishing just like right now. Everybody's going to get pushed off the ocean tomorrow at noon. 90% of the boats will be crossing the bar by 12 o'clock tomorrow. That's what I want. I know my boat will. He's out there right now. So then we're all going to be sitting at the dock trying to get them off again. It's the same thing. It'll happen, 4 days later. So it's going to happen all through the spring. And then when I get into albacore buying, you know, in the summer, buying fresh albacore or salmon. Then I'm dealing with shrimpers at that hoist, unloading taking their outriggers off. Sometimes they're there for over a day. I've seen them there for 2 days, tied up at dock. They're taking me out of business. So, yeah, I want a short-term thing, but I want to be able to have a place to go get my product off. You know, salmon is the same thing. I mean, I got guys call me. I got markets that want them, and they want them now. And so, you know, a lot of times we're unloading whatever, you know, and jumping on a truck and driving them up to Portland or Eugene or whatever. I mean, you go for a week with no product, people want that fish, and it's fresh fish. It needs to get to the market.
And Mark brought up another good, the gear, the swapping of gear, you know, and that'll be coming right up here. It's been the practice down at the hoist dock was originally there for that, as I understand, swapping out, and then fish came into the picture later. So the way we've got it set up right now is gear swapping takes priority generally, although we try to cram it all in there right alongside, that it takes priority there. But I mean, these are things that we, you know, there's a push port wide, and we need to plan a lot of this stuff long term, and I think that's a universal opinion from staff to everybody who's represented in the audience here. So, but I definitely think that we can tomorrow probably come up with something that will work for people to be able to have you know, when you need an overflow location, we'll have that figured out.
And I think that's what's important too, is that, I mean, I don't want to keep doing this like every other week. I mean, I think what we're doing is giving you, the general manager pro tem, the flexibility that whether it's just surge or, you know, if 2 of our cranes crater or our hoists blow apart, which, you know,
Knock on some wood.
Not all that unusual of it. You know, that we have at least some kind of emergency plan to deal with this stuff in the short term, and there isn't, you know, cooler heads are discussing it now. We get something on the table, knowing that this is a broader discussion that we'll have as we look at the international terminal a little closer, business planning, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, this seems like kind of a quick, easy way of handling the concern that we got right in front of us.
So do we want to entertain a motion that we direct our pro tem manager, our manager, to make a subcommittee maybe, like with I'm the liaison.
What I would recommend is just let me do it.
So you write up a couple paragraph agreement, and then you'll bring it back to the commission somehow.
Yep. I'll get it out. You know, I'll send it to you guys. We have to be careful about how I do that so it doesn't become a serial meeting. I'm very concerned about that. But if you give me the latitude to get it figured out, I'll bet you that we can create something that people are going to be favorable to. But I don't know how comfortable you are with that. So if you're not comfortable with it, then you should add a bunch of procedure into it, which will slow us down.
I'm fine with it.
It sounds like we almost need another meeting. Just if he's going to draft something, then to come back.
Well, but
to agree on it, we need a public meeting to do that.
But do we really need to, I mean, is this something we have to have a resolution and pass as a commission?
I don't think so.
I don't really think so, Jeff. I mean, I'm kind of thinking that Aaron can take a crack at this. I mean, the direction here can be Aaron take a crack at this, reach out to whatever stakeholders you feel necessary to be sure that needs are accommodated, circulate this in a blind CC for any additional comments on the commission, unless otherwise heard.
And it would be Aaron's discretion that if he has commissioners screaming and squeaking and squawking, he could see that maybe there isn't a consensus.
If I have a bunch of complaints from fishermen and from the commission, I'm not got a problem. And then of course we need to have a meeting. But in order to keep it as quick and easy as we can, I think I can get this done tomorrow.
That would be helpful.
And it'd be pretty straightforward. And if I can't get it done tomorrow, well, then you'll know we got to get it back. We should probably go and have a meeting on it, I guess. Although we have had 6 meetings in the last 2 weeks, so I would like to point that out.
You're getting darn good at these.
I'm getting worse at it. That's the thing.
Okay. So
You got enough direction?
I feel like I honestly, if we couldn't have got his boat in there to the dock the other day, I probably would have just done it anyway. But because I wouldn't have had much choice, because I don't want anybody's catch to die.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's best for us to figure out a good plan and get it right.
And then you'll email back out and
Yep.
we'll go from there. And you touched on long-term. We got all kinds of things to address, from scheduling, equipment.
Yeah, because all of this changes as soon as, like Mark said, as soon as we start having to swap out people to shrimp, and we're talking about tuna, and then halibut will be coming across. It all changes, and the slime meal is another variable that gets thrown in there. That if they take a lot of space and a lot of time to offload, and that's so it will change throughout the year. Every time we change seasons to something different, it'll be different.
The need will be there potentially still.
It will be, yeah.
I think the need will grow and grow and grow and we'll get rich.
So are we?
I don't know that we'll get rich, but it probably the need will
Somebody's
grow.
bound to get rich.
Are we good? Are we good here?
I have one more thing.
Yes, Walter.
Since that meeting went 3 hours, I'd like to know if we could record those meetings so we could listen to them at another time if we can attend. I mean, we're recording the commission meetings, and
Any reason we can't? Or do we need
No, you just need to tell me to do it.
Okay, do we need a motion?
no, just tell it.
It's not a good idea.
Yeah, I think.
Record the meetings and post the recordings.
Yeah,
It makes things way easier on us.
yeah. Oh, don't you want to take notes?
Came up with that meeting.
No.
One other thing that came up at that meeting, Evan was clear on, well, everybody was in agreement, and there was just to simplify what can happen out of the terminals for future use, including Ron, it was a balance between shipping, ocean research opportunities, and fish processing and offloading. And, it came up that there's niche shipping, came up as quite a conversation, would fit better out there. But those basic 3 tenets of shipping, ocean research, and fish processing seem to be 3 basic things that the terminals could be focused on.
Anything else on that? Okay, let's move forward to accounts paid.
Thanks, Andy.
Everybody have a chance to look at that?
I have no questions.
I'll entertain it.
I make a motion we approve the accounts paid.
A second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. General manager recruitment update. We had a commission meeting today, and we had a vote 3-2 to approve Richard Stelner, the consultant, to negotiate a contract with Doug Parsons, one of the 4 finalists, and so that was carried forward today. Next is international terminal supervisor position. Eric?
Okay, page 73, you'll find I listed this as an old business agenda item because this is a carryover from what I recommended months back. Don Moon has been serving as the interim terminal manager since October. With him filling that role temporarily, he's not officially vacated his maintenance position back in the commercial marina. So we filled that vacancy with a temporary employee. The difficulty there is that the commercial marina staff serves as a backfill to the terminal. And since we only have one person at the terminal, it happens fairly frequently that we have to send somebody down there to the terminal to cover that position. Temporary workers can't run the crane down there. They have to get certified on the crane. So that means that any given day we're another person short, as long as Don is in a temporary capacity as a terminal manager. It would help port staff if the commission approved me to negotiate a permanent employment contract with Don Moon. I'm currently considering a better training program for our crane operators at an NCCCO approved school, which would improve our training program and our crane operators across the board. I'd like to get the seats secured for the summer for those employees, and if I can get this role filled permanently, then I can start doing that. Don's been performing well at the terminal, which it's a difficult position to fill because the broad range of skills that person requires, or that position requires. He's got to do everything from doing oil changes to operating heavy equipment and then arranging longshore labor at times. He's demonstrated an eagerness to learn. He's dedicated to customer service, so he understands the terminal. He understands commercial vessels. He can work with longshore and he's a highly skilled and experienced crane operator. So we could wait until the new GM is seated. If we do that, we'll need to cover the gaps we have in our pool of crane operators, and it may have a detrimental impact on ongoing service. Although seems like it might be relatively short, but I don't know how long the incoming manager would take to make their mind up on this issue. The impact is indefinite, depending on when they get hired and they get comfortable enough to make a decision. We've budgeted for a permanent terminal supervisor, so there's no budget implications. And I would recommend that a commissioner make a motion to authorize the GM pro temp to negotiate a permanent employment contract for Don Moon as terminal manager to fit within the approved budget and the port's wage steps.
So he wants a position?
He does, yes.
How long has he been in it, did you say?
He's been doing it since October. I haven't received anything but very positive feedback on his performance out there.
I could verify that with my follow the trawl hat on, is that he's been a wonderful asset to the terminal operations.
I've heard nothing but glowing things.
The main thing about Don is that I think he's a really good fit for us, because he's one of the type of folks that he's not looking to figure out all the things that he can't do or he's not going to do. He wants to find out ways to get things done, and we need to give him some training on a few things here and there. But he's definitely willing to take the job, and he very much wants to do it. So,
I'll make a motion that we authorize Aaron to negotiate a permanent employment contract for Don Moon as terminal manager.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm not here.
Okay. Lost my place here. So, new business. Ingress mitigation area issues. Aaron?
Okay, so the bottom line is our permit for Army Corps, it's nationwide our permit for the NOAA facility, the dredging that we do there to maintain the depth that's needed in the berths. It's an Army Corps permit. It's a nationwide permit 2009-6272. Requires us to provide this mitigation area right next to NOAA where we grow eelgrass. And we have a density requirement. We have to grow so much eelgrass. We were coming up on year 6 right now with that effort. So the Army Corps contracted a company to come in and dredge South Beach Marina. Before they got started, we provided them with a diagram of how other folks had set up the pit over there to leach off the sediment as they're draining the water through. They set the pit up differently than what was in that plan. We called their attention to it right at the very beginning and recommended that they go ahead and do what had done before. They didn't follow our recommendation.
Did you put that in writing?
What's that?
You put it to them in writing?
I sent it to them in writing, but I wasn't that at that time. I didn't think it was going to be an issue. But I sent it to them in writing, showed it to them. They asked for it. We gave it to them. At the very beginning, we did email them and brought up concerns that the pit was not set up the same, and it looked to us like there was a lot of sediment coming through and going toward the eelgrass mitigation area. They ended up replying and said that basically they were performing in accordance with their plan. I suggested that possibly instead of evaluating whether or not they're performing in accordance to the plan, maybe they should evaluate whether their plan was good or not. They didn't do it at that time. We had to at that time the tides were low enough for us to see. Tides got less extreme, but we couldn't see, and then a couple weeks later when we could see again, I believe that they have impacted our eelgrass mitigation area. To what degree, I don't know for sure yet, but I have notified them of that in writing. I talked to them on the phone today. They acknowledge that there is a significant amount of sediment that came through that is in the vicinity of the eelgrass. They suggested that it was in an area that was not originally intended to be the eelgrass mitigation area. I confirmed that it doesn't matter if it was our eelgrass mitigation area or whether we planted it or not. You can't dump that stuff on top of eelgrass. So I'm still working with them on it. At the end of the day, it's gonna be up to them to come up with a solution to it. So, that's where we're at with it right now.
Did you talk to John Van Stavern about whether or not it was on our area or not?
Yes, I did, and he was very forceful that I was absolutely right.
Okay.
You know, that it doesn't matter if it was in our area. First of all, second of all, it was in our original area. It definitely was, and I sent the Army Corps documentation that showed that too.
Okay, thanks, sir.
What's the exposure the port has from the Army Corps on this?
Exposure by.
I mean, if we dumped a bunch of sediment all over our eelgrass,
They'd be all over us very quickly.
That's that exposure. That's what I'm wondering. What does that mean? I mean, is there going to be a financial component? I mean, could there be a penalty, fees? What kind of liability do we have?
We don't. It's on them. It would be. It's them.
I know, but
you're saying, let's say,
Army Corps doesn't care about them.
Right.
They care about us. And we have to deal with them. But I mean, that's what I'm saying is I don't understand the process of what's the liability.
I'm going to continue suggesting to them they come up with a solution. If they say no, we're not going to come up with a solution, then we'll have to go back and answer that question legally, I think, and find out because what it's going to. This is year 5 of growing this eelgrass, and every year we have to go out, count by hand how much we're growing. Pacific Habitat Services comes in, helps us, locate where it's at. We have to record the density. We have a density requirement, and it takes a lot of resources. And so, if it turns out that all that's been wiped out, then yes, we need to figure out what sort of claim we have that we need to file.
So the Army Corps will tell us we're out of compliance, and we'll in turn go talk to these other folks and say, "Hey, you got to make this right."
To the Army Corps. Again, it'll be to the Army Corps. It's the Army Corps will say you're out of compliance, and we'll go back to the Army Corps and say you're the one that made us out of compliance. You need to fix it.
That should go over well. I see another meeting in our future.
Yeah, that's why I'm letting you know now. It's going to be an issue, I think.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay. Draft financial reports for audits. Aaron or Mark?
Yeah, I'll take that, cover that. So, in the meeting packet addendum is the final audit report submitted by our auditors, and walk you through a few features in that report. Without going too deep, I want to start back on page 54. Kind of towards the end of the report, there's a reconciliation of revenues and expenditures on a budgetary basis. And I want to bring this up for a reason. In the top section on page 54, you're going to see the budget basis. There's a column for total revenue, total expenditures, and net income or loss per fund. The 5 pages prior to this give detail for those numbers by fund as well. These correspond to the financial statements that we submit in the monthly board packets. Those are on a budgetary basis as well. The audit report, when we get to from some of the front financial statements, they're on a GAAP or accrual basis of accounting, which is a little bit different than the budget basis statements. So I kind of wanted to point that out. So at the back, we're starting with that budget basis, and you can see that we end up with a net income of $113,706 there. That's in that top section. That bottom section, this is a great summary of the adjustments that have been made, the GAAP adjustments or accrual adjustments that have been made. Those have been made with our year-end close. There's a couple there that the auditors have made. You'll see then at the bottom there's a change in net position of a negative $826,081. It's a net loss. So we're going from a budget basis net income of $113,000 down to a net loss of $826,000. I wanted to point that out because if you're going through our monthly budget basis statements and then you're seeing this net loss and these bigger numbers, that's the reason why. We do start with our budget basis numbers, but those are adjusted for accrual basis accounting, and that's what the statements and the schedules that are the meat of the audit report are. That's how the report is. So if we move to then page 20, this is like a profit and loss statement. It's a statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. And this is port-wide, so you're going to see all of our operating revenues there across all 5 funds, operating expenses, non-operating revenue expenses, and about 3/4 of the way down the page, you can see that same change in net position. There's where we are arriving at that $826,000 loss for the year. The section down below shows our net position at the beginning of the year. That's in the private industry, that would be retained earnings or net assets. That's $47,821,000. If you factor in the $826,000 loss at the end of fiscal year June 30, 2017, we're at net assets of $46,995, so our net position has decreased. If you go back a page to page 19, it's a statement of net position that's similar to the balance sheets that we submit each month, but again, this is adjusted for accrual basis accounting. It lists the balances in our assets. First half of the page, second half are liabilities, and that leads down to a summary of our net position or fund balance in equity of that $46,995,053. So I kind of wanted to show you how we start from our budgetary statements and end up with these front statements that may look a little bit different than what you're used to seeing month to month. Point out a couple of things. In comparing this year's audit to last year's audit, the operating revenues increased by $110,000. Operating expenses only increased by $33,470. Our operating loss, which you're going to find on page 20, in that statement of revenues, expenses, and changes, about halfway down the page, you'll see our operating revenues minus our operating expenses. There's our operating loss of $285,000. That is $76,000 less than the operating loss in the prior year. In looking back over the last 5 years of our net position, let's say similar to retained earnings, that position continues to decrease as it has for the last 5 years. So in the staff report for the finance department, you'll see a summary of the last 5 years and how our net position has continued to slowly decrease. That probably plays into some of Todd Kimball's analysis that was at the noon meeting. There is a section at the beginning of the audit report that's the management's discussion and analysis, and that has some comparisons that are required for the port-wide figures, the 16-17 fiscal year compared to the 15-16 fiscal year. So you're going to see some of those side-by-side comparisons for the last 2 years. Overall, the port in its 16-17 audit received an unqualified or clean opinion from the auditor. There were only 7 adjusting entries made by the auditor, down from 16 in 2016, 22 in 2015, and 33 in 2014. So that's a signal that we are closing our books and doing our year-end work adequately instead of having the auditor have to do that. The state of Oregon Division of Audits has given us till tomorrow to file the audit, so it's my recommendation that the Commission move to adopt the audit. Unless there's any questions?
An alternative would be if you're not comfortable doing that, then we can ask for another extension.
Any questions for Mark or comments?
I'd just like to thank you and Becca for your hard work. Without having a CFO here, I think you guys have done a really good job. I'll make a motion that we approve the audit.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Nobody? Okay. Thank you, Mark. Staff reports. January occupancy report.
Yeah, it's typed there by Bill Hewitt, South Beach Marina and RV Parks Manager. We just got through Seafood and Wine Festival this past weekend. One note is that the surcharge that we employed this year worked just as it was designed to. Oftentimes what winds up happening is people will make reservations for seafood and wine. They'll make a bunch of reservations that they can't back up, and then they'll pull out of it the week before, either because they can't get enough friends to commit or because they don't like the weather or any other number of things. We employed a surcharge this year, and it worked perfectly. We had everything booked solid right away, and it stayed all the way through the event, and everything worked out well. I did get a couple of phone calls from people that were aggravated because they wanted to back out at the last minute, and we stuck to our policy, and I just told them we were sticking to the policy. It was published on the webpage. So.
All right. Anything else?
Hey, Aaron, what's going on with the Guardian again? I saw you had a note here.
You're in my staff report, right?
Yeah, I skipped ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Do you guys want me to? Do you want me to continue and run through that? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So the Guardian, the Guardian is looking to get a secured mortgage over here in South Beach. And we're reconfiguring a couple of floats to make that work, and we've got a gate coming in that we're going to be able to put up and make it so that you won't be able to access the boat. The general public can't have access to it. And we're trying to get it down to the point where they'll agree to a lease rate on that dock and be able to move in there. And that's where we're at with it. They've accepted the terms. Basically, we're trying to get legal to. Because the state's going to have, they got a bunch of standard caveats that need to be added to the lease and things like that. So we're in the final plans of working that out. As soon as I have it done, I'll submit it to the Port Commission for approval.
Are they funding any of the gates that you mentioned, or any dock modifications or anything?
What I did is I built a lease rate based upon what it's costing us to do all this work, what the service life is of that work, and then what it's going to cost us to replace that stuff when it's about 10 years. We're putting some new through rods in, some new whalers on the docks, putting the gate up, new pedestal, some new cleats, and all of those improvements last about 10 years or so before they got to be redone. So I took the cost of it, spread it out over 10 years, figured out what the future value of money was going to be a decade from now, and then built a lease rate based on that.
How long of a lease is it?
They're looking to go for a 5-year lease, and then they want to be able to go. They want to be able to have the option to go month to month after the 5-year lease, but we haven't worked that out for sure yet because it's going to require us to be able to recoup. One of the main points that they're looking to is to reduce their lease rate as early as they possibly can. And as far as the port's concerned, we just need to make sure we cover costs on the dock. So if the fire department wants to get the boat, or anybody else wants to be able to come in there, you know, if the sheriff wants to put a couple of RHIs there or something like that, we could work with everybody to spread that out. I figured we go by linear foot on it, and basically they're paying for security. The port's concerned, but I'm concerned about covering the cost of the improvements. They're coming to us because they want security is what they're buying.
So there's space to grow in a secured fashion.
Oh yes, yeah. It's
Haven't seen.
I believe it's 70 feet worth of dock that we're putting in. Well, it's already there. We just need to connect it. So
Which dock?
it's a dock.
A dock over
So there's a set. Yeah, if you go down to a dock over here.
here. The one where the old place used to be, or the old ramp.
Yes, and then outside it's not connected right now.
Right.
We're just taking a piece off the end and then bringing it down and connecting it so that you can actually walk across to it, and then we'll shut that off with a gate.
So you're continuing the north-south.
That's right.
And
Right.
putting a gate in.
Right.
That's good to allow the city to get their grant in this year too. I know.
Yeah, they're planning on getting it in, and I'm working with the fire department on getting a couple of documents from the Coast Guard, and we're getting that taken care of. So I'm still getting bids. Do you guys have any other questions on that?
Why would, if we're going to go 5-year lease, I mean, I know that the equipment is a 10-year, but if we only have a lease for 5, would you have divided that by 5 instead of 10 for a lease rate?
Well, we're going to be able to recoup the cost of it in 5 years. The second half of that is what we need to do to replace it. So we're going to pay for the dock in the first 5 years. We'll pay for our next dock in the next 5 years, but we're only signing them to a 5-year lease right now. Any other questions on that? Or okay. So I'm still getting bids on minor improvements to provide Dulce Energy with their 225 square feet of office space over here at the old cherry plant, and to be able to do 23,000 square feet of open lot space where they want to put plants for growing seaweed. Their current plan is they should be able to. We heard from DEQ last week on the phone, and I still have yet to see it in writing, but they said that they are going to allow Dulce Energy to go ahead and truck seawater into the location, circulate it through the tanks, and then discharge it into the same swale that we were talking about that the Army Corps did their thing in. So we still have no lease in place or anything like that. As soon as I get confirmation from DEQ that they're not going to require there to be a permit, then we can go ahead and get the lease moving on it. I've already got all the estimates ready to go on providing them what they need at the location. My overall goal with this thing, though, is I don't simply want to just say, oh, we need more revenue for the port. What we need to do is get that property in shape properly. It's the previous tenants, and maybe the previous 2 tenants, certainly took the toll on the place, and it wasn't maintained. So what I'd like to be able to do, instead of what we were talking about early on, was to lease them the entire property and lease it to them at a lesser rate now since they're starting out, and then they would pay us more later on. Rather than doing that, I'd rather do it like this, where we lease them a small portion of the property at a time and pay for the improvements for the next portion of the property. As they grow, we grow with them, and we get the place back squared away again. I mean, it doesn't even have IT wires running to it, and that's going to be somewhat expensive to get that done. I got a couple requests for bids out on it. So that's where we're at with that. I met with Rondis and Nimrick last Friday after the user group meeting out at McLean Point, Uquina Industrial Park. I definitely, as we go ahead, the scientific side of things is going to become more and more. Right now, we have a tendency to talk about shipping and fishing. Science is going to come in there someplace too. So,
Could you tell us what NEMRIC stands for?
I don't have that off the top of my head. Do you know what it is, Sarah? Or?
No, I don't. That was
Northwest National Marine Energy Center. Actually, they call it PMEC now, which is Pacific Marine Energy Center. It's Alaska, University of Washington, and
Did you
Florida.
you said that we had an agreement already for them to ship things across the terminal south?
No, they had signed letters of support for our grants and things like that, and we have been very involved with them getting the site put here.
They did say it's going to be, so they're probably going to have a lot of well forecasted needs. They're not going to be starting this year anytime, but they said they should be able to tell us, well in advance when they're going to need to come in and offload some things here and there. But because it's research, there's probably going to be a lot of unexpected problems with their equipment, and so that will probably be one of the most challenging things for us to deal with, if anything. But not challenging, but not impossible by any means. So that's that. We've been working on HAZWOPER training, hazardous waste operations, and emergency response training for our personnel. This week, I requested the company to come out. I'm trying to see if we can get everybody done, generally speaking, at the same time, instead of having to send employees out one at a time and put them up in a hotel someplace so they can get this training. We're going to see how this goes. Hopefully this will be a good way to do it. But this should be annual training for all of our operations employees. Todd Kimball gave us an idea of what he can provide in the way of analysis of ports leases. This was something that Stuart requested last time. So he has done this type of work in other ports, but he was very clear that his specialty is not in the realm of real estate. And so our side of it would be we need to provide him with some comparables to much of our property. As we go through and analyze our lease rates, his work would probably cost the port about $2,500. The comparables can be problematic when you talk about port property. I get these calls all the time from other real estate companies asking, do we have any property that's similar to, I can't remember the last one I got, but it's from other ports up and down Washington and Oregon coast, and they've got some property that they're trying to compare with ours, and oftentimes they just don't compare real well. So it's because the ports are so unique. But that's going to be a challenge, and if it it costs them $2,500, we can easily I don't need a motion or anything. We can figure out how to do that.
Do we have personnel time to delve into that?
That's the thing I got to figure out is how much time it's going to take us to do these comparables and who's going to do them. And we may not. Like I said, we've been extremely busy this last 3 weeks or so. It seems like it's been nonstop. So we simply haven't had any time to do anything else but respond to operational things that come up and respond to or close out, do the monthly close. They've been really busy getting that done, and then trying to move into the next project that we have here or there. We don't have a lot of time, so we'll have to figure out how to squeeze it in there. Here you see it again. It's a busy month at the hoist dock. Our second shift worked well. It slowed down here recently. He's back to working regular hours, but we absolutely are not. If there's a need there, if it looks like we can keep him working, somebody let me know. If it's not working what we're doing, like I said, please come in, see me. If what we're doing doesn't work for you, and we will do the best we can to get you taken care of. Nothing else to report on Dulce and DEQ.
Aaron, just real quick, how long is the lease is being considered for Dulce?
I haven't even got that far with them yet. Don't know the length of it. It depends on how quickly they think they can grow into the next phase. So I don't know yet. The only thing I've done a really good job so far of identifying is what our costs are going to be to provide them with what I mentioned here. That's about it. And then what the cost of the next couple phases might be.
I did read about Dulce. There's a really hot new ticket for seasoning foods and stuff in New York City.
Well, wish them the best. Hopefully we can get DEQ on board with it, and then they'll be off to aquaculture. And one return item from Anderson Construction. They would like to go month to month after the end of year 2 on their lease of the parking lot over here. So I've got Pete working on that. Pete Gittner working on that right now, and I'll probably have to send that back by the Port Commission again. But they'll be ready to go April 1st, starting April 1st. You got the calendar meetings for next month. I was working on this all afternoon after the work session. had a couple engineers from GFI and Berger ABAM come out and take a look at the road seawall. We located the as-built plans for the seawall down there at South Beach, as well as a pretty comprehensive file on the history of what's been done there over the last probably about 20 years. I will keep working with them to try and figure out an estimate on what it's going to take them to provide the Port Commission with an estimate for what needs to be done over there in order to get the wall shored up properly, and give you a couple of different options.
Is this Nat McDougall's Construction and Berger Abrams Dean Engineer? Is this one of those general contractor engineer combination things we're starting out with?
I'm trying to see if we can do that. It's going to be a good project for CMGC once it comes around to getting done, and so
You have to start with that.
Right, you have to start that way. So, but this is not. You're basically doing qualification-based bidding instead of the job requirement-based bidding. So, I need to make sure that we mix that up and entertain the possibilities of other engineering firms and things like that. It's going to be that wall is a pretty sizable project. It's a very large project, but like I mentioned before, I don't think it's one that's been talked about a lot, and it's going to need to get addressed. So I think what it's going to be is we're going to have to, in the next, as we develop the budget for the next fiscal year, in there we're going to have to leave some room to have this estimate done, I think.
I mean, how bad is bad?
That's what I'm trying to be able to. I knew you guys were going to answer that question, and that's why.
And they red tag this thing and basically road, couldn't work and do their work, in which case they would not. We would be in violation of the lease. Is there that kind of a potential here in the short term?
I can't answer that sitting here. Right from what I've seen, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. That's why I need to get somebody to seriously look at it.
Is there any way to measure the bulge, like where it is now, and if it gets worse next month? Or?
There are a couple bulges.
Bulges.
Yeah, it's not. There's not just one. There's not just one place in the wall that's sticking out. I mean, there's a few of them. So, if we could measure it and see how it progresses year to year, but it wouldn't be my recommendation that we wait more than a couple of years to start looking at this thing. I mean, I think we need to get a good qualified opinion on the exact state of it right now, and then go from there. But it's going to cost us a bit to do that. So, but I mean, it is a possibility that it could be bad enough that it would affect the rogue's operation. In just the same. That it is the possibility that any number of other things could happen. I'm not saying that that's a likelihood or anything like that. But I'm just saying that we should approach this project with the understanding that that is a possibility. That the wall at some point in time would get to that point. What we need to figure out is how close to that point we are right now.
Did the sewage problem earlier have anything to do with the wall?
No, I don't know. It was the sewage issue. That has more to do with our storm drain problem that's going on over there. The storm drain that connects.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't need to know.
Okay. All right. And then Chris Erbach discovered that there's a program with the PUD that we can use to switch everything out down here to LED lighting instead of sodium lights, and we can do it for about $2,000, and it saves us a bunch of money in the long run in power bills. Plus, it makes everything look a lot nicer at nighttime. So we're probably going to get working on that. And then I've got all the locations. You'll see that the commercial dock brought in a significant amount more this last month. Kent commented he thinks it's the most we've ever done down there. So that's what I got.
Commissioner reports. Sarah?
I had one constituent group show up that there's maybe some revisiting down the road, and I'm not sure how they want to approach it, maybe come to the commission meeting about the tall ships and their time frame of being here in town. It's a concern to some paper players.
Okay. Stuart?
Nothing to report.
Walter?
What's your picture in the paper? I'm sorry. Jeff and I went up and talked to Coastal Caucus. Long and the short of it, they want to have some more open communications with us. Once we have our GM, I'd like to start hearing from us more frequent basis and hear what's going on down here. I think they're very interested in what we're doing down here.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah and I were at a round table with Kurt Schrader, and really nothing significant out of that. There was people from City Council of Depot Bay and Lincoln City, and nothing more significant to report out of that. Let's see. Calendar future considerations, March 17th, 4th annual.
Yes, just real quick. I mean, on this trip to Salem that you guys did, what was when you said they want to hear from us more?
We hadn't had a GM for 7 months, and they hadn't really heard from us, and they wanted more updates and contact with our GM.
So how often is typical? And should Aaron be going to visit with these guys?
No, just phone call. They're like our local legislators, Gomberg and Roland. I think David said that he used to hear from Kevin every 10 days, and he hadn't heard from us for a while. So I think it's just we'll call every couple of weeks and say, hey, this is what's going on.
I can certainly do that.
Doesn't the commission president deal with she's we have Madam Commissioner and President now, but I thought that the commission president dealt with that.
So the approach that I've taken, and it very well may be something that you disagree with, or that you feel like it's wrong since I started this, but I didn't get there wasn't a manual on how to do it. So I have generally, mostly I talk to executives in the government. So basically the full-time employees, the paid folks, my counterparts, and then I've left the politician stuff up to the board commission, unless some, Kurt Schrader called me and asked me to go out to dinner last week, and I've let you guys know about that. That's the only kind of stuff that generally I don't talk to the politicians unless they call me. So.
Well, Patricia's president. She's not here tonight, and I guess that'll be up to her what she does with that information. So. Calendar. Future considerations, March 17th, 4th annual Shamrock Run Ardor Adventures, March 12th, Commercial Fishing Users Group meeting, March 27th, regular commission meeting, April 3rd, commission budget priorities work session. With that, we are to our second public comment section. Anybody wish to? Yes.
Jim Shaw, just a private resident from South Beach, and I think maybe we're running out of time, but I'll sit up front. I haven't been to a meeting in a while, but I've noticed that there's controversy all the time versus international terminal and the fishermen, cargo versus the fishing fleet. I read about it every week in the newspaper, and heard about it again tonight. And what I did, I went to the courthouse and got the original ballot measure of your bond, which is $15.4 million. And the reason we passed it, and it's very well laid out here, the reason we passed it, and that was for both the fishing fleet and cargo. And cargo was the big thing because that's where the money was. And if you look at $15.4 million, that's a $500,000 commitment just on the bond, doesn't include the maintenance. It was interesting reading the support of it, and I got a copy here and can have it. So that's 12 years ago that we, myself and all of you, voted on this international terminal. And it was interesting that here that I mentioned it was to rebuild the dock to benefit the fishing fleet and deep draft vessels and barges, and it would protect the environment, enhance the economy, create jobs, and ensure us with the federal dredging our channel. So that was the reason the bond was passed. And it was supported by quite a few people, including the fishermen wives, and that's in here, along with Kay Crockett. And there was opposition from two people, two groups. One was Friends of Quinnipiac, you remember that, unfortunately. And the other was a separate individual. So that's my one comment. And I'd like to, Karen can make a copy of this and get it back to me. And I think it'd be well for all of you to review this and say, why did we put our money in there? What are we doing? And with all the controversy that's going on, I'm not sure we're doing that. That's comment one. Right, under 3 minutes?
You've got 1 minute left.
Well, I've got a good thing. The other thing I was talking about, Hallmark Fisheries, and this is another issue. They had planned for 4 boats to come in. And got personnel down there at 6 o'clock in the morning to unload crap. The boats never showed up. They went to the cash buyers. And here the personnel were there waiting on them, and they went to the cash buyers, who are paying 75 cents more than the commercial fishing people are. And I can understand the fishermen going to the crab buyer. I have no problem with that. But somehow there's got to be some equity there someplace. Because the commercial places, repair their own hoist docks and do all their own repair. The port doesn't do it, they do it. So somehow there's got to be more equity, I don't know how, between that difference. So these people down here are paying a lot of money for their fishing facilities, and the people on the cash dock, Port Dock 7, really, in my view, are not contributing that much to the cost. I don't care whether it's new forklifts or cranes not working or whatever. So that's an issue I think you need to resolve. Difference. Okay. That's the 2 negative things. Now I got a positive thing.
If you can wrap it up real quick here.
Okay. Positive thing. This is a thank you from Oregon Hunter Association for your donation of 2 annual passes of the Florida Newport that we had on we co-sponsor a banquet every 2 years for Oregon Hunter Association. And because of you, as well as other contributors, we made $17,000 for our local group. And this is what was on the counter for your passes. This is the OHA donor seal for you. And I know I won't go there. Now, I just want to quickly read some of the things that are helpful. What we did in our county here, we began mowing 55 acres Salmon River Estuary, 10 acres, we've increased the outcrop from 30 to over 100 from Salmon River Estuary. We do that every year. And we sponsored a youth day at Select Gun Range with all the young kids, and we do that every year with rifles, shotguns, 22s. We awarded $3,000 of scholarships to high school kids that were going on to college in environmental type education related subjects. And we donated $7,500 for the Select's boat launching site at Highway 101 for kayaks and canoes to get that built. And provide funds to 4-H youth development. And those are the big things. Our next banquet is coming up in May of 2019. It's a year from now, a couple of months. So I'll be back to you to get another donation for your contribution. And here's the thank you letter for your help.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just a clarification that March, I had a man at Royal College Crawford that March 12th date for the Fishermen's Users Committee. That's a holdover from before we changed our process.
Yes.
So I think that we should cross that off and then figure out a different date.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yes.
I just wanted to have a final comment about, I just want to start with saying that we really appreciate, I think everybody that's working on the service dock or the hoist dock really appreciates Aaron Gretz and what he's done to help us and recognize the income that is coming to the port and the revenue that, like they said, maybe the highest month they've ever had coming to the port, even with the delayed season. That's pretty remarkable. Imagine if we had started on time, and a lot of even more towns were coming. So we really appreciate that, and Aaron, and also appreciate you looking into the safety concerns of the hoist dock, because there is some safety concerns. And with the income, we are spending sometimes over $1,000 a day, just me. So you have to imagine then there's somebody at the other end of the dock as well, you know, and that some of that could go back into repairing that dock. You know, the ladders are pretty bad to get down on the boats from there. The electrical has issues. And I mean, like, people getting electrocuted every day issues. So, like, there's some issues on that dock there, and I appreciate that you guys are looking at that. And I also appreciate the longshoremen being open to us being able to use some overflow, because I think it helps safety-wise as well with the forklifts, and you say like many forklifts having to work at the same time on that small space, and the trucks and all of that. And we just appreciate that, and that you guys have been open to it. And I'm saying that as a part of the user group, and I'm also a part of other community groups that have all really great about how Aaron has appreciated what we're doing. And also just wanted to add that we do service over 50 vessels in our port, so it's helping a lot of guys. And by the end of the season, usually to at least 100 boats in our area. So that's, and people are coming here for that, and have been doing this for 12 seasons. So 12 years ago, there was only, you know, one other live wire that wasn't there very much, you know, and so I don't think it was such a big deal, like going to the terminal or something. There was plenty of space, and so times are changing, and a lot of different fisheries. Shrimp is being unloaded there, sable fish is being unloaded there, and some large quantities of those things, as well as crab and eels are year-round, and that's something that wasn't really happening 12 years ago when I was here. It's kind of little people came and went, but there's a pretty substantial 2 boats that are fishing for it all the time. And I also appreciate that the perishable goods, that you guys are realizing that. And like Stuart had commented, do people leave because they can't get them unloaded? In some ways, yes, because their product dies or is dying and they have to go somewhere else, so they don't have a one waste issue. So we are dealing with live products, and it's more about the quality and getting stuff out in a timely manner. And I know that that's a stress of the eel production as well, because they're even more pressure than us in the bay. They can't really hold them in the bay at all. So really appreciate that from you guys, and that's what I want to say. So, thank you.
Neil Cordial, living Elizabeth Street. I don't know, Heather, what your timeline is for your fishermen's unit group. This wasn't in the packet, your letter, and I didn't get it until tonight, so it's kind of hard to respond and review it if it doesn't get here until the night of the meeting.
We met on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I just wondered if you could, you know, maybe meet on Wednesday so this stuff could, you know, so guys.
It also comes to the meeting.
That'd be nice if I was in town working, but Friday I was in Longview, Washington, so that makes it kind of difficult. So, you know, clearly I accept your invitation, and it'd be great to be involved in the conversation, but, you know, Brett, maybe if you could schedule the meetings like on Wednesday and get a little time, get a little more time, you know, but I understand you're waiting for the port to put out what they're going to talk about, so it's kind of a catch-22, but it would be nice to be able to review this before the night when you're sitting down and trying to figure out what we can talk about. So thank you.
Okay.
And frankly, we didn't get any new information that we were waiting for. Right, because we just had that one. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We're adjourned.